Welcome to Learn with Roblox. In today's video, we're going to talk about the law of sines. So what is the law of sines? I'm going to label this triangle over here. Let this angle be A. I'll let this one be B. I'll let this angle be C. And then now I'm going to label the sides. So opposite of angle A, I'm going to label this side little a. Opposite of angle B, I'm going to call this side little b. I'm going to call this side opposite of angle C little c. So what's the law of sines say about all these sides and angles? Well, it's very simple. I'm going to write it down. So all it says is if you take the sine of A, angle A, and divide it by little a, which is just the side, that's equal to, if you take the sine of B, angle B, and divide it by side B, which is also equal to the sine of angle C divided by side C. So basically all the law of sines says is that if you take the sine of an angle and then divide it by the opposite side, that constant is going to be the same for every single side and angle that you do this with. I also want to point out something. Notice how these are all fractions that equal to each other. That means you can also flip it and do it the other way around. So what I mean by this is you could also write this as A divided by sine A is equal to side B divided by the sine of angle B, which is also equal to C divided by the sine of angle C. So you can use either one of these when you're doing the law of sines. Either one is okay, and I'll try to show both in this video. Now let's take a look at a few practice problems so we can better understand how to use this formula. In this first problem, we have a triangle where the sides are 22 and x, and we're not given the third side, but that's not important. And we have angles of 41 and 37 in this triangle, and we need to try and solve for x. So let's try and use the law of sines to solve this problem. I'm going to write the law of sines again. So the law of sines says that if you have, I'm going to write like this, side A divided by the sine of angle A, where big A is the angle opposite to the side A, that's also equal to another side divided by the sine of its respective angle. So why don't I label a few parts in here? I'm going to call 22 A, because that's the side, and that means x will just be B. And then now for the angle, we have to choose the angle that is opposite of the sides. So 22 corresponds to 37 degrees, x corresponds to 41 degrees. Now let's just fill in everything and try and solve for x. So I'm just going to erase all this here. So we said that A is 22. And the angle that corresponds to 22 is 37 degrees. And then we had x for B. And the angle opposite to side x is 41 degrees. Now, all you need to do is compute this and solve for x. So first, do 22 divided by sine 37 on a calculator. If you do that, you should get that is equal to 36.55. And then now you have x divided by sine of 41. I'm going to rewrite this to make it a little easier to see what I'm going to do. I'm going to write this as 1 over sine 41 times x. This is the same exact thing. So now just do 1 divided by sine 41, and that'll give us the coefficient on x. So take out your calculator and do 1 divided by the sine of 41. If you do that, what you should get is that the coefficient on x will be 1.524. Then now, to solve for x, just divide by the coefficient, which is 1.524. And now once you do all this math, just do 36.55 divided by 1.524 on a calculator. You should get that x is equal to 23.98. And that is your answer for x. Let's move on to the next problem. In this problem, we have a triangle with side lengths of 5, x, and angles of 118 and 23. To solve for x, we're going to need the law of sines. So let me write that down. The law of sine states that if we have a sine of angle A divided by side length A, that is equal to sine of angle B divided by side B. And of course, you can also write the sine of equal to sine C divided by side C. But for the law of sines, you only need two sides and two angles. You don't need all three sides and three angles, although you can if you need to. But here, we're only dealing with two sides and two angles, so I'm just going to write this smaller form. Now, let's just fill in what A and B are. So, this little a and the little b, those are sides. I'm going to call x, I'm just going to call that A, and I'll call 5 B. And now for big A and big B, those are the angles that are opposite to those sides. So for this big A over here, that's going to be 118 degrees because that is opposite of side length x. And then for 5, if you look at the angle opposite to the side length of 5, what's that? It's 23 degrees. So now let me just fill in everything we know now. So we said that little a was just side x, and side b was just 5 units long. And to fill in the angles that are opposite to the sides. So opposite to 5 is 23 degrees. And opposite to x is 118 degrees. And now we can simplify this and solve for x. So first, I'm going to do sine of 23 divided by 5. If you go ahead and do that, you should get that it is equal to 0.0781. And then if you do the sine of 118 on a calculator, you should get that the sine of 118 is 0.883. And make sure your calculator is on degrees while you're doing this. If it's on radians, you might not get the right answer. So now we need to solve for x. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply both sides by x. And what that does is allows me to cancel the x in the denominator because you don't want x in the denominator. So now let me just clean this up. I'm just going to have 0.883 on this side. And then now I'm just going to have 0.0781 times x. So now I can just divide by 0.0781 on both sides to solve for x. So now just do that math on a calculator. So if you do 0.883 divided by 0.0781, you should get that x is equal to 11.30. So this is x, and that is our answer. Let me fill that in up here. So this was just 11.3. Let's go to the next one. In this problem, we have a triangle with side lengths of x, x, and 13, and an angle of 32 degrees up at the top. To solve for x, we're going to want to use the law of sines. So the law of sines says that if you have a side A, and you divide it by sine of big A, the angle opposite to side A, that is equal to side length B, divided by the sine of angle B, big B, where big B is the angle opposite to side B. However, it might seem like we don't have enough information. We have x, we have 13, those are our sides, and we have 32, and, well, what's that angle over there? Or what is this angle over here? Do we have enough information to solve this problem? Well, actually, I think we do, and here's how we can find the missing angles down here. This is an isosceles triangle. What do you know about an isosceles triangle? Whenever you have equal sides in a triangle, the angles opposite those equal sides also have to be equal. In other words, in an isosceles triangle, these angles over here must be equal as well. That is a property of an isosceles triangle. So now let's try and solve for these two angles here, now that we know that they're the same. What is the total sum of degrees in a triangle? That's 180 degrees, right? And then now, if I just subtract 32 degrees, I'll find how much angle is left over for the two angles down here. So if you do 180 minus 32, you should get that we're left with 148 degrees. And we have to split that across these two angles down here. So 148 divided by 2, that is 74 degrees. So what this tells us is that these angles are 74 degrees. And now we have enough information to solve for x. So now let me just write down the law of sines with all the parts filled in. So the law of sine says that the side, or you can do the angle first, is up to you. I'm just going to go with the side. So I'll do 13 divided by the angle opposite 13, 32. So the sine of 32 is equal to the side length, which is now x, divided by the angle opposite to it, or the sine of the angle opposite to it, which is 74. So sine of 74. And now we just need to solve for x. So do 13 divided by sine of 32. If you do that, you should get that is equal to 24.53. And then to simplify x divided by sine of 74, rewrite it as 1 over sine of 74 times x. So then just do 1 divided by sine of 74. And if you do that, you should get that is equal to 1.04. And now, all you need to do is divide by 1.04 on both sides, since that's the coefficient on x, to solve. And then if you do all that math, you should get that x is equal to 23.59. So that is our answer for x. X is 23.59. And because this is an isosceles triangle, both of those sides are 23.59. In this problem, we have a triangle with side lengths of 4, y, and x, and angles of 63 and 31, and we need to solve for x and y. First, I'm going to find what this top angle up here is. To do that, remember there's 180 degrees in a triangle, and if we do 180 minus 63 minus 31, I'll get how many degrees the top angle has to be. And if you do 180 minus 63 minus 31, you should get that the top angle is 86 degrees. So let me just draw that up here. Now we can apply the law of sines. So I'm just going to rewrite the law of sines again really quickly for us. It states that if you have A divided by sine of big A, that is equal to B divided by the sine of B, where A and B are the sides, and big A and big B are just the angles that are opposite to sides A and B, respectively. So now I can fill in numbers. So I'm going to use 4 as one of the sides and 31 degrees as the angle, because we already know that. These are already given to us, so we need to use this to start. I can't use x and y in this problem together. I have to use 4 and 31 degrees because they're given to us as a pair. And then I said I'll solve for y first. So I'm just going to put y up here. And what is the angle opposite of y? It is 86 degrees. So I'm going to put sine of 86. And then now, to solve for y, I'm going to cross multiply. Remember, to cross multiply, you just need two fractions that are separated by an equal sign. So to cross multiply, draw your diagonals and multiply them out. So I have 4 times sine 86 and y times sine 31. Let me clear that out and write this down. So we have 4 times sine 86, and that has to be equal to y times sine 31. And now we just simplify and solve. Take out your calculator and do 4 times sine of 86. If you do that, you should get that it is equal to 3.99. So pretty much 4. And then sine 31, just put that into a calculator, you should get that it is equal to 0.515. And then that'll be the coefficient on y. And then now, just to solve, just divide by the coefficients, 0.515 on both sides. And now just do this math. 3.99 divided by 0.515. Put it into a calculator, you'd get that it is equal to 7.75. That is our answer for a y. So I'm just going to rewrite a y as 7.75 in the triangle. Now let's solve for x. We can set up the law of sines again. So let's do it one more time. 4, the side length divided by the sine of 31, because that's the angle opposite to 4, has to be equal to x divided by the sine of 63 degrees. And then now you could cross multiply, but I just want to show a different method as well because there's many ways to solve fractions like these. I'm going to multiply both sides by sine 63 to eliminate it. And do this on the other side. Sine 63. Sorry, that's kind of badly written. So the sine 63 will cancel out in the denominator here and leave us with just x. And then on the left-hand side, we're going to have, if I rewrite all of this, 4 times sine 63 divided by sine 31. And then now you can just do this into a calculator. I'll just make it a bit easier and give you sine 63 and sine 31. So sine 31 is 0.515. Remember, we had that from the previous problem as well. And then if you compute sine 63, that ends up being 0.891. And then now just do 4 times 0.891 and then divide it by 0.515. And then that'll give you what x is. If you do all that math on a calculator, you should get that x is equal to 6.92. So that is our answer for x. And now I can raise the x up here and replace it with 6.92. And just like that, we have solved for x and y in this triangle.